Appear to have a quorum.
Okay. So I'd like to call this meeting of the Sea Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities Advisory Committee meeting to order. Before we continue, I would like to take a moment of silence to honor our Las Cruces police officer, Jonah Hernandez. If we could have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. And if we could have a roll call to establish quorum, and as you answer the roll, if you could say who you represent. We do have a new member on board.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and I will go ahead and start us off with our new member this evening, Mr. Bustillos. I think the mic is on.
Just hold it down, or? Okay.
Just touch it, yeah. Anyway, Mr. Bustillos is present.
My name is Longino Bustillos, and from Doña Representative, I'm present.
Ms. Curry?
I'm Ashley Curry, and I am the representative for the town of Mesilla.
The citizen representative.
Citizen representative, thank you.
Mr. Bencomo?
Andrew Bencomo, Citizen Rep, Pedestrian Representative.
Mr. Wilcox?
Jim Wilcox, Cyclist Representative.
Mr. Guerra? Mr. Casillas?
Albert Casillas, Representative for Doña County.
And Mr. Chair.
George Pearson, I'm the City of Las Cruces citizen representative.
Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Okay, our next order of business is approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes for the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair.
Hearing none, I'll hear a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Andrew Bencomo, so moved.
Albert Casillas, second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the agenda. On favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The agenda is passed. Now we have approval of the minutes for our January 16th meeting. Were there any discussion on these minutes?
Mr. Chair, I have a couple potential corrections, please.
Okay,
Page 15, line 22, it says Bennett. I think it should say Bencomo. Page 18, line 31, it says Lead, L-E-A-D, and it should read League, L-E-A-G-U-E. That's all.
anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I have a correction. Page 7, I think it's about line 18, there was a statement about what we're allowed to discuss and whether or not we were allowed to based on whether it was on the agenda. And that was a statement made by you, but it was inadvertently attributed to me.
Okay, any others? I'll hear a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Ashley Curry, so moved.
Albert Casillas, second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as amended. All in favor? Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. We're on to public comment. Do we have any members of the public? I guess I can have my question with that. I guess Valerie counts as public.
Yes, she does.
The day I don't turn off.
As the public's calling in, Mr. Chair.
Okay, discussion items. The MPO annual safety report.
Yes, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would like to introduce Ms. Katerina Provengi, who will give this presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Good evening, committee members. This is the Mesilla Valley MPO 2024 Annual Safety Report. So the annual safety report, much like the NMDOT safety performance measures, it focuses on 5 main aspects, focusing on the number of fatalities, the number of serious injuries, the rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled. I will be calling that VMT. The rate of serious injuries per 100 million VMT, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. This is a review of our report. So in 2021, there was a total of 3,000 739 total crashes. In those crashes, 9,327 people were involved in those crashes. 57 of the crashes resulted in a serious injury, and total there were 59 serious injuries. There were 11 fatal crashes and 11 fatalities resulting from those fatal crashes. 76 non-vehicular crashes did occur. Of the 76 non-vehicular crashes, 5 of those were fatalities and 8 were serious injuries.
Just to now acknowledge that Mr. Waller has arrived at the meeting.
So these are the number of fatalities within the Mesilla Valley MPO planned area. In 2021, there was a decrease since 2019. So we went from 21 was our highest number of fatalities in 2019. 2020 was 16 fatalities, and 2021, 11 fatalities. They decreased by 31.3% from the year 2020 to 2021. Looking at the projections, it's in the boxed area on the graph. It's still showing a slight increase. However, the number of fatalities do tend to go above and below the 5-year moving average, and basically take it with a grain of salt. The rate of fatalities also dropped, just like the number of fatalities in our area. The rate did drop by 38.9% from 2020 to 2021, which is good. Comparing our fatality rates to the states, we did fall below the state's rate of fatalities in both the number and the 5-year moving average, which is good. So looking at the rate of the fatality, we were 39% below the state of New Mexico's rate of fatalities. This slide is looking at the timing of the fatalities along with the days of the week and the time of day. You can see more occurred in the get the mouse over here. Most of the fatalities did occur in the afternoon and evening hours. There were none at night. So this figure is taking that same figure I just showed you, and this is looking at all of the timing of the fatalities since the year 2015. Just trying to see if there is a pattern. Majority do tend to occur in the late afternoon and evening hours. So this is comparing, this is all of 2015, or all the crashes since 2015, fatalities since 2015. Looking at fatalities by the parts of the day, the majority, I guess it was about even between afternoon hours and evening hours. Again, there were none that happened at nighttime, and that's between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m. And then 27.3% did occur in the morning hours. Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. The crashes, the fatal crashes that did occur, there were 3 of them in the mornings, and then 4 each, 4 in the evening, 4 in the afternoon, looking at parts of the day. Fatalities by parts of the month. January, February, September, and December had 2 fatalities each. There were none in the months of March, June, July, October, and November. These are looking at fatalities and the holidays. Not always a national holiday, mostly focusing on some of the holidays where people do tend to go out and celebrate and partake in festivities. We have, so with the holidays, some are on the weekends, so it's the amount of days that holiday kind of counts. And then we have the start, so starting at 6 p.m., if it's like on a Saturday or Monday, it's like on that Friday or something, but it's like the day before, and then the night after. If it's a weekend, then it's on the Sunday morning, early Sunday morning at 6 a.m. I'm sorry, Monday morning, 6 a.m. And then looking at this, the holiday that had the most fatalities occur was during Labor Day. There were 4 fatalities that occurred on Labor Day in 2021. 2 of those fatalities did involve alcohol. Second was Martin Luther King Day weekend. There was 1 fatality. Let's looking at that. Looking at fatalities and lighting, the majority did occur during daylight hours, which, as we saw in the time of day, or during the daylight, and it makes more sense. There's higher volume of traffic that is out during the day compared to any other part of the day. Second was dark, but had dark areas that did have some lighting, and then dark, not lit. 3 fatalities out of the 11 were in those areas. Fatalities and hit and runs, there was only 1 fatality that did have a hit and run occur in that crash. The rest of them did not, which is good. Looking at drugs and alcohol involved fatalities. So of the fatalities, 27.3% of them did have alcohol involved. Well, 3 right here. I have the chart right here. 3 fatalities involved alcohol. 3 fatalities did have drugs involved in the crash. And 3 fatalities had both drugs and alcohol involved in the crash. Only 2 of them did not have any of these factors involved in the crashes. After looking at that, we decided to look in the past fatality data. And so the black line, so the orangish line is alcohol involved, of all the fatalities. The red line is drugs involved, and the black line is both. As you can see, there is an increasing trend starting from 2018. It did start to drop in 2020, but it's at its highest, where it's both drugs and alcohol and also drug-involved fatal crashes were increasing. Alcohol-involved fatalities did remain fairly steady, however, it is slightly dropping. Okay, so that was all the fatality data. This is going on to the serious injury crashes. We did have an increase in our area from 2020 to 2021 by about 57%. So again, there were 59 serious injuries that resulted, and then 57 crashes that resulted in these serious injuries. Looking at the rate of serious injuries, there was because the number went up, there was an increase in the rate. Went from 3.7 to 6. When we compare to the state of New Mexico's rate of serious injuries, we are above the state's numbers, or the state's fatality or serious injury rates. And it was both the number and the 5-year moving average. Looking at the serious injuries and timing and days of the week, Sundays and let's see, Friday, Saturday, Sundays seem to have quite a bit, Wednesdays as well. Looking at the timing over here at the vertical aspect of this visual, more happen in the afternoon hours and some in the evening, again, because due to more volume, more drivers being out on the road, there's a higher chance of having a crash occur with resulting in a serious injury. These are the timing of the serious injury crashes, but over the past few years since 2015. And we can see that it seems to be the trend during the day, daylight hours, when there is more traffic on the road, there are more serious injury crashes occurring than at any other time of the day. Looking at the timing, again, basically evening hours, afternoon hours have the highest number of serious injury crashes. Looking at serious injuries, again, majority happen in the afternoon hours between 12 and 5 o'clock, as we just saw in the previous visual. 32.4% of the serious injury crashes occur in the evenings between 5 and 9 o'clock in the evening. And then at night between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m., we have 23.6%. The least serious injury crashes happen the least amount of time in the mornings. Looking at the serious injury crashes by month, November had a significantly higher amount of serious injury crashes than the remaining months. January, February had the least amount of serious injury crashes in the year 2021. Looking at the lighting, again, most happened during the day. 61% of the serious injury crashes did occur in broad daylight. And then we had 18 in dark but not lit areas. 16% was third with dark but lighted. Some lighting was there. Similar to the fatalities, there were a lot fewer hit and runs involved than those without hit and runs involved. Only 3 of the 57 crashes did involve a hit and run. And just like with the fatalities, looking at the alcohol, drugs, and both, so this is basically the percentage of all the serious injury crashes. There's a high amount of the serious injury crashes, high amounts did have alcohol involved, and this is looking at the past several years from 2015. 2019 did have the highest, 2020 drop. 2021 did show a drop in alcohol-involved crashes. Drugs and crashes both were involved, stayed at a 0, which is good. These are looking at the lighting, fatalities, and serious injuries on a map, all mapped out. The yellow dots do represent the ones that happen in daylight. However, it does tend to clog up the map. So in the next few slides, we took out the daylight hours and are just focusing on the ones where you do not have, you have basically different lighting conditions in the evenings. So this is looking at North Valley. The fatalities are the red dots. The serious injuries are the black dots. And then looking at the gray ones, basically different colors. The majority of the crashes that occurred in the evening were basically dark, not lit areas, which is concurrent with North Valley's lighting situation. There is not a lot of lighting. This is looking at Picacho Hills and over by the airport around Crawford Road. There are some that we do have fatality here, serious injury here, and then also a fatality on 70. And basically out here, we do have more dark, not lit conditions, but we also have basically dark, but some lighting is available, which makes sense. Looking at, this is US 70, East Mesa area. We do have quite a few that occurred, quite a few crashes that occurred with dark but not lit conditions along US 70 and also along Holman Road, specifically the northern part. This layout, this inlet that's in here is showing basically this is Baylor Canyon Road and Dripping Springs Road, so not a lot of lighting out there. Again, majority of these that occurred in the evening were dark, not lit conditions. Same thing with South Valley. Basically, not a whole lot of lighting around here, so the crashes that do occur at night, majority of them are in dark but not lit areas. And looking at, sorry about that. So we do see quite a few that are occurring along 478, more so than on 28. Of course, there's the freeway on I-10 as well. Mesilla, we have some that are occurring with dark but not lit conditions, which is expected. And then when we look more in the center of Las Cruces, because we do have a lot more areas with more street lighting and denser population, we do have, it's more varied in terms of the light conditions that occurs with the crashes, the lighting, or the fatalities and serious injuries, which makes sense. And you can see how it follows along a lot of the main roads. So more traffic is basically higher volume of traffic on the major roads, especially collectors and some arterials that we have. You're going to have more that occur. This is looking at the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. The 5-year moving average did remain steady. However, from 2020 to 2021, there was an increase by about 26% from 10 to 13. This is looking at the non-motorized crashes by the day. These are the total non-motorized crashes. It was interesting to see how on Mondays there appears to be a higher number of non-motorized crashes, and then also at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or evening, seems to be, has these two factors seem to show a lot higher number of non-motorized crashes than any other time of the week or of the day. Excuse me. We have these are the non-motorized crashes over the past several years from 2015 to 2021. It is all showing very similar to the fatality, serious injuries, where it's the same similar pattern where we have more occurring in the afternoon, more in the afternoon, specifically between 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in that area. And it seems to be short. These are over the past several years, so this is 2015, 2016, 17, so on. And the trend does seem to show, again, more traffic. And then, of course, if you're with pedestrians and pedal cyclists, usually they're out during the day at these times anyway, but then you also have traffic as well, vehicular traffic that is out as well. Looking at non-motorized crashes by parts of the day, the majority happen in the evening, as I showed in the previous slides, from between 5 and 9 o'clock in the evenings. And second was the afternoon hours between 12 and 5 o'clock. And then we have 21.1% of them occurring in the mornings between 4 a.m. and 12 p.m. Looking at the non-motorized crashes by month, February and August did have the highest number of non-motorized crashes that occurred. The least amount of crashes by month occurred in May. They had the lowest. June and July were also fairly low, but even as well. 2021 non-motorized crashes and lighting. The majority happened during the day, as I've shown in other ways in previous slides. Second was in dark but some lit areas, which does seem to kind of go with the evening hours having the most of the non-motorized crashes occur the most. This is looking at lighting and the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. The majority of the fatalities were actually all the non-motorized fatalities were all pedestrians. There was one pedal cyclist serious injury crash, and that was on on the intersection of Main and Picacho. And there was one out by one pedestrian serious injury out by on US 70. So that was all the non-motorized information. Now looking at all of the crashes together, this is all 3,000 and some odd crashes. This is looking at it by the day and time. Basically, the majority are occurring. Fridays seem to be a hot spot, as well as also again during the afternoon and early evening, more so in the afternoon. Looking at all of the Mesilla Valley crashes by month and day, Fridays showed a higher number than the other days in terms of just crashes occurring. And then August, and it's interesting to see here, the beginning half of the year, there were a lot fewer crashes than looking at the second half of the year. So basically August, September, October, November, December had much higher, a higher amount of crashes than the beginning of the year. Looking at all of the crashes and holidays throughout the year, let's see. Veterans Day did have the highest. So this is crashes per day. Basically, the total crashes that occurred in these different time frames, and then dividing it by the number of days that the duration of that holiday lasts. And so Veterans Day had an average of 26 crashes per day. Second was President's Day, 3-day weekend for most people. I'm sorry, second was Labor Day, which was concurrent with the fatality data. And then third was President's Day. And then we have also looking at the alcohol-involved crashes that occurred. Of the alcohol-involved crashes, the one with the highest percentage was Labor Day again, high amount of alcohol-involved crashes. Apologies for this being so small. I was trying to fit it in the slide. So this is looking at all of the crashes that occurred in 2021, and the lighting, again, the majority occurred in daylight. Second was dark but not lit conditions, and then we have dark but lit conditions as well. And this is also broken down by severity, so we have our fatal crashes. So Class K injuries, or Class K crashes, and serious injury are Class A injuries, suspected minor injuries, possible injuries, Class C, and then no apparent injuries, and then just the total. And so even just across the board in terms of severity, they all show a pretty similar trend. This is looking at first harmful events. So in the past several years before 2020, the data we received would have something called what's called top contributing factor. And so with the top contributing factor, while it seemed useful, in actuality, it wasn't very useful at all. If you have an accident where someone was inebriated and then they were speeding, and then they succumb to, they become seriously injured or pass away, the way it'll be classified as it was a drunk driver, it was alcohol that was the main factor. But they won't look at the speeding, because what they do is they take all the different top contributing factors and they rank them. And so instead what they do now is they got rid of that system, and now they focus on the first harmful events. So looking at this, we have a collision with an animal, collision with fixed object. The highest one that occurred was collision for the fatal crashes, if we just focus on here. Collision with a person was the highest one. I know it says 0.1, but it was like 0.1 blah, 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 of all the crashes. But that was the highest one. And then we have, if you look at the injury crashes here, the highest occurrence or first harmful event that occurred in a crash was collision with a motor vehicle. And then similar between the property damage only crashes and then also the total crashes. So this report is meant to look at crash trends and patterns should they be present. The state and the Mesilla Valley MPO are committed to reduce fatalities and serious injuries. I will now stand for comments and questions.
Okay, thank you. And to note, our NMSU representative has arrived during your presentation. Your very first graphic, or one of the first graphics, was the circles that showed everything.
Correct.
To me, that was a very good summary of the report, but that's not in the report, is it?
Nope.
So maybe do that as the executive summary graphic for future times. One of the presentations some time ago, maybe it was the state safety targets or something, it was mentioned that 2020 was going to be skipped as far as thinking that it's such an anomaly, but you're not doing that. You're just using 2020 figures that you have.
So, Mr. Chair, in the rate of fatalities and serious injuries, and and all of the projections that were made in those 5 categories, I went ahead and basically replicated what the state did, because if we're going to compare our rates of serious injuries and fatalities, it wouldn't be true to comparison if we did not follow their method of calculations on our end. So those numbers were basically the predictions that were made, the forecasting that was in there. It's all done without the year 2020 in it. And and according to their annual safety report from NMDOT, they continued calculating calculating their predictions using that method, and so we did as well.
Okay, and because one of the numbers on serious injuries from 2020 to 2021, it showed, trying to remember, a big increase, I think.
Correct.
Because 2020, during the pandemic, there were fewer drivers, but more fatalities, because drivers were driving faster because nobody else was on the road, which reflects an issue with our road design, that people will drive as fast as they feel comfortable.
Right.
Yes, this is Jess Waller, City of Las Cruces bicycle citizen representative for the BPAC. And you showed some data for Mesilla Valley MPO for motorized fatalities and injuries. And it showed that the Mesilla Valley MPO was better than New Mexico for fatalities, but it was worse than the state for injuries. I didn't see any similar data for non-motorized injuries and fatalities. Are we worse or better than the state for injuries and fatalities when it comes to pedestrians and cyclists being injured and killed?
Well, the state doesn't really graph or do rate of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. And so we just mimicked what the state did. So if we don't have a rate, basically the rate is the one we use to compare our numbers to the state's numbers because it's a rate. And
That's
what,
unfortunate.
and so that's what gives us the idea. But the state NMDOT does not give us a rate of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries.
Yeah.
So therefore, even if we did it on our own end, we wouldn't have that number to compare to the state's.
Just putting it in a spreadsheet and generating some graphs, it wouldn't take that much time.
Right, but this is the entire, but with ours, again, with our end, we can do that, but we cannot compare. We don't have a rate from the state to compare.
You got a lot of data there. You got, what, 380-something injuries? I didn't see the total number of fatalities for the period that was discussed for non-motorized.
11.
There are 11 total
11.
injuries, or, sorry, 11 total fatalities.
For how many years? 20 years?
Oh, for the years, 90,
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
I believe, since
You got to
2015.
look at the trends, and the trends look, they're not decreasing.
Right.
They're flat or up, if anything.
In
They only
2020,
dropped because, well, at least for during COVID, it was really interesting that the motorized crashes dropped during COVID, but like you mentioned, I think George did, the motorized fatalities or injuries increased during COVID. People with driving as fast as they feel comfortable traveling, perhaps, could be an explanation for that. Anyway, that was my question. I'd love to get the comparison. Is the Mesilla Valley MPO better or worse than the state for non-motorized fatalities and injuries? That was the question that I asked last time.
I understand,
We still don't have an
but-
answer.
we do not have the numbers from the state to be able to make that comparison.
And one of the things, we're fortunate that our numbers are small, but that also means that we have widely fluctuating numbers over the years. Some years we had 0 pedicyclist deaths. Other years we can have 2 or 3. And as a percentage, that's a huge number and
Correct.
makes the charts look ugly. Anybody else down here?
Longino Bustillos, Doña County. First of all, I want to say I strongly agree. You need data to know where you've been, so you know you can make better decisions in the future. So I applaud. I'm a data person. Looking at this, this is up my field because I have a lot of experience with data analysis. So when I look at this, I feel like there's some holes. And so I'm asking the committee, so I'm new to this, so how do we get advice to the MPO on what kind of data is needed? For example, when you look at data, you want to look at, well, how do we find out what happened, and so we can go to the source and fix that, whether it's educating pedestrians, educating drivers, or infrastructure on the road. So how do we get back to that? So the first thing that hits me is I went back through and read through a bunch of reports, and one thing that I roughly have estimated that here in Doña, you're 10 times more likely to get struck by a distracted driver than you are a drunk driver. Yet I don't see any trends on this report. And I'm thinking it's only gonna get worse because of this thing. So how do we make changes? I mean, I love the numbers, I love it's great, but how do we get some changes on what we're seeing, that way we can really focus on get down to the roots of the problem and focus on those. So that's my question.
So, Mr. Chair, Mr. Bustillos, the data that we receive does not have a column for distracted driving. The only columns that it has now is, no, back in the past, before 2020, it had what I was talking about earlier, the top contributing factor. The top contributing factor would have cases of, it would have distracted driver on there, and very similar stuff as well, reasons why, main reason why the accident happened, and that one was on there. However, when they switched over to first harmful event, it doesn't have distracted driving on there. But one thing to look at, and I think we should look at that for next year, was we can request a different kind of data where it's on a, let's see, it was vehicle level, and I believe it's passenger level. And that's where we can, I believe it might have something in there for with distracted driving, not wearing seatbelt or restraints on there. However, it was realized a little too late before the report needed to be completed. However, that would be something we can look at, to try and get more on that level for next year's report.
So what report was it that we had? So it was from the uniform crash reports?
No, these, no, Mr. Chair, these are from the.
I mean, not this report, but I've seen reports where there are crashes and then there's causes and, you know, they're drunk driving, distracted driving, and also undetermined, which is the big category, almost as big as anything else. And I can't remember where that came from.
So the data was the data that you can request from UNM, from their GPS department, because that's how we receive our crash data. And then we put it into GIS, map it out, create the maps that way. But it's all the vehicular level, it's basically the overall crash level information. Now with the passenger involved one, it is a lot bigger, but again, we just, by the time I realized that we could get that kind of data, it was already a little too late to put that in the report. However, I would like to do that for next year, for next year's annual safety report.
Okay. And the other question that I had, you list whether it's drug involved, but there's no detail as to whether it's marijuana or prescription or fentanyl.
Because the information does not give us that. It just tells us if it's drug involved.
And that's probably not even on the original report.
And
There's
that one
probably no way to tell.
and that one combed through the data, and it does not give us a distinction on.
Right.
And then, yeah, that's, it
Because-
only says alcohol or drug
Yeah.
related or involved crash, but it doesn't give us any other details.
Yeah, because the obvious question is, well, we have cannabis is legal now. How did that impact these crashes?
Right.
But we also have a fentanyl problem that is, well, everybody, law enforcement is well aware of. And, you know, which is the problem?
Which is also part of why we wanted to look at the back, basically the history of alcohol-involved crashes, drug-involved crashes, and both being involved in crashes in the past years to see how that, because in 2022 was when it was passed and sales were legal, sales of cannabis were legal in 2022. So this next annual safety report will have the data from 2022.
So we can infer perhaps that it's because of cannabis if that number in fact goes up.
It's hard to say because it doesn't say what kind of drugs they are, but it would be interesting to see what happened in 2022.
Mr. Chair, also keep in mind that cannabis wasn't legalized until partway through 2022, so we might actually be looking for a comparison with 2023 data for a more holistic beginning of year to end comparison.
Which means we won't see it until 2026.
That unfortunately is correct, Mr. Chair, but I have charged that windmill many a time, as you know.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a couple questions, please?
Yes.
Ashley Curry for the record. I was wondering, of those 11 fatalities, do we know if those fatalities were at the time of the crash, or were any of those serious injuries that later were determined to be fatalities?
They did not specify on that. They didn't say when it occurred. It just said it was a crash that had a fatality. In this crash, there was a fatality at that crash. They don't say when.
I feel like it's on us. I know we have the state keeps track of the official data. Is there anybody here within the MPO or within the community that keeps track of crashes? I mean, I know we see them in the newspaper, we hear police reports or whatnot of fatalities that are happening. I know it wouldn't be the official report, but we hear things that say somebody was killed, then we know it's at that time. I'm just wondering, are we getting the information from hospitals, a week or two later, somebody was in intensive care and they didn't make it? Are we getting those counted as fatalities as well? And then the other piece, sorry, I know you're about to answer me, Mr. Ray, but the other piece is I really do feel like in 2021, we were still not back in school until later in the year. I mean, I think that still runs into some of the pandemic numbers. So I think it'll be interesting to see 2022. But, to me, I don't see why we can't be looking at what happened last year. I mean, those people are dead. They're not undetermined. Those fatalities have happened. I feel like somewhere here, whether it or not, it's MPO's position to do that, to keep track of the fatalities so that we can just have a bit more current. I mean, we're looking at 3 years back now. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Kerr, that is a very good question that you raise, and unfortunately, the answer, it's that onion has got a little bit more layers of unknown than even Ms. Provingi alluded to just a moment ago in her answer. But unfortunately, we don't know the level of follow-up that the police departments do with regard to following up on serious injuries who are transported in grave condition to medical facilities. I don't know the quality of the follow-up that police departments around or sheriff's departments, law enforcement in general, do to instances like that. That is for us an unanswerable question. I doubt the state knows. It probably varies from department to department, quite probably from officer to officer. And I would have to say, likely that may be an uncontrollable unknown in the data where there's no, I mean, if we can't coerce the state into giving us the crash data a little bit sooner than they do, I don't know that we're going to have any mechanisms to be able to get kind of drill down to that level of specificity, because sometimes, unfortunately, people can have very grave injuries that they do survive with for a while, but then they're in the ICU for a while, and they may pass away at some point. I would have to say some people, regrettably, that probably isn't getting tracked well, but I don't know of a mechanism via which it could be, unfortunately.
Mr. Chair, may I ask one more question? Who at the state keeps track of this data?
I forget the name of the particular division within an MDOT. I know that the director was, his name was Franklin Garcia. He came and spoke to the policy board in 2022, but it's my understanding he retired, did he not, Mr. Guerra? I believe he did. I don't know who's over that. I don't know who's over, and I don't remember the name of the division within NDOT, but I don't know who's over it now.
Mr. Chair, this is Andrew Guerra. We do have our asset management team in place. I can certainly reach out to them, ask some of these questions, see if there's something we can get clarification in more detail and get back to everyone.
Thank you. And I think just one final question, sorry, is do other states have to wait this long for their data? I mean, we're number one in pedestrian deaths and we also wait 2 years. Is there are all the states in this position?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Curry, to my understanding, the answer to that is no. I know from interactions with El Paso MPO and with the DE, formerly Mr. Doolittle, now Mr. Chavarria, that TxDOT doesn't deal with this sort of constraint. However, and this is a very important however, I do not know necessarily the mechanics of the distribution of the data for Texas, because I know that the DEs in Texas get their data distributed very fast, but that's on the internal side. As far as publicly released data in Texas, I don't know for sure. I also don't know for sure in Arizona, but I believe I've heard that they get their data twice a year, sent out twice a year. So quite possibly maybe within 6 months or so. But don't quote me on that for Arizona. I don't know for sure. That's just secondhand conversations that I've had. And I don't know about Colorado. I've never had a conversation about this with regards to data distribution in the state of Colorado. But it's my belief that our neighboring states do not deal with this particular issue as far as the extreme delay in data. And this is one of the reasons why I have saddled up my mule and charged at this particular windmill a number of times over the years, because I do think it's ridiculous that we have to wait this long.
Thank you. I'll join you on your mule.
Well, it's not big, but we'll find room.
Mr. Chair, Jim Wilcox for the record. Getting back to a committee member's statement, as far as I can summarize it, that we need more granular data to be able to make recommendations to those people who are in charge of making change. I have requested and received accident reports from the police, and it details what they find at the time. For an example, in one situation, it was claimed that the driver was speeding, by witnesses said so, and it was that they were distracted, but also that the cyclist had no light. So I've received that, and I was able to look at that and see what was it that they found. But correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it true that the staff is not allowed to get those police reports because they're confidential information?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, it's not that staff is not allowed to receive that data. We do have a relationship with LCPD where we have access to it. What we're not allowed to do is we're not allowed to distribute that data ourselves. We can use it internally for analysis and aggregation of reports, but we're not allowed to disseminate that information as if it was ours, because we are not the data custodians of that data. The city of Las Cruces is the data custodian for crash records within the city. Doña County is the data custodian for crash records in the parts where DASO has jurisdiction. Town of Mesilla is the data custodian for incidents that happen within the jurisdiction of the marshal's office, and presumably NMSU police are the data custodians for NMSU. So the data custodian can release that information according to the policies and procedures that bind them in accordance with IPRA, et cetera, the state laws governing the distribution of that data. But we as the MPO, we don't own any of that data, so we can't
I
distribute
get
it.
it. Thank you for that clarification. Is there a way we can overcome the barrier to receiving that data?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, we are working on that. We are working on that. We are in contact with LCPD. We are trying to get an MOU officially in place between the policy board and the city council to govern the exact uses of the MPO data. Unfortunately, as I'm sure we can all appreciate, law enforcement is very busy. This sort of paperwork doesn't necessarily rise to the level of priority, so we've had some difficulties in maintaining consistent communication with LCPD. We don't have a similar relationship with the Doña County Sheriff's Department right now. We've not been able to successfully make contact with DASO with regards to this topic. And while we do have some degree of contact with the Mesilla Marshal's office, this specific topic of conversation has never been broached with them, but we do have ambitions of making similar approaches and setting up similar relationships with those two agencies as soon as we have the MOU in place between ourselves and the City of Las Cruces Police Department.
Do you have any estimate of how much time that might take?
No, I do not.
So
It's taken longer than I had hoped for us to get the MOU with LCPD.
So it could be, could I make an estimate at least a year?
Could be. I really do. I don't know.
Okay.
I truly don't know.
And then the last thing is, I want to kind of clarify some of the statistics. We don't really have an analysis that determines whether it's statistically significant for the different days and times and types of crashes and things like that. Because the numbers, unless it's aggregate data, the numbers are so low, and I know it's not low to say 10 people died, but when you only have 10 people in a year, and I don't mean only like it's not many, but when you have, say, 10 people in a year who have died, and then you start splitting it out by time of day, and then you look at different years, and there's one or two more in one year and less in another year, it's really difficult to make a statistically valid conclusion from that. You can use a heuristic to say it looks like this is happening, but when we're at those small numbers, it's really difficult to have a sense of confidence in making a determination about where trends are going and how much of a difference there is. Thank you.
The biggest thing with that is that a lot of times the data is not normally distributed. And even if it kind of is with the looking at the time of day, but however, the time of day, do you really want to say the time of day? Do you want to have a 95% confidence interval that says that, hey, there's more people on the road at this time of day because of the time being affected? It's not really the time that's affecting the crashes, it's the number of drivers that are out on the road at that time. And so far, looking at the data, the only thing that is normally distributed isn't really something that you would want to perform a confidence interval test on that data, because time is, if everything was different where people worked from, let's say, 12 o'clock at noon until 8 o'clock, and that was the majority of people, well, then we would have a higher amount that would occur more in the afternoon and the evening when you have a lot of people out. And that's just societal, natural schedules.
Yeah, those will be, as you know, it's confounding variables.
Right.
Thank you.
May I add one more thing? I would also say that it would be helpful to note with those timings where the sun is setting and the sun is rising, because I think visibility is a contributing factor in fatalities. I know Dr. Trujillo, our superintendent, was one of those fatalities, and that was one of the contributing factors, is that it was right at sunset and the sun was in the driver's eyes. So I think that makes a difference. If you're looking at 5 p.m. in July, that's probably less likely than 5 p.m. in January or February. So I think that
And
those would
also-
be helpful if you are looking, and I think Mr. Wilcox's point's well taken. When you've only got 10, it's hard to find a trend line.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, Jess Waller for the record. I have a couple follow-on questions. I agree with Jim, with Mr. Wilcox regarding the statistics and the validity thereof. The first question, and this probably falls in the bin of not well-recorded category, are 911 calls or complaints made either by automobile or motorized vehicle operators against cyclists being tabulated, or conversely, complaints, 911 calls made by cyclists and pedestrians about vehicles? Is that data being recorded? It's probably too optimistic to hope that it is.
The 911 call
Yeah,
data
911
on the
calls,
crashes?
either complaints against cyclists and pedestrians or complaints against motorists.
No, we do not receive those.
Okay, yeah, I was afraid that was the case. Secondly, is there a threshold for a number of injuries or fatalities that triggers a remediation being made, either to improve the pedestrian or bicycle facilities, or to have better facilities or stoplights, signage, lighting for cars, so to reduce incidents of injuries and fatalities? Is there a threshold value? How is that adjudicated, that action needs to be taken?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Waller, unfortunately, I have to say that MPO staff is not in possession of that information. We don't know. That would be something that the individual member jurisdictions would have to answer as to what, if there are thresholds and what those are. MPO staff doesn't have that information.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Well, thank you for that presentation, and we'll move on to
Thank you.
our next agenda item, Metropolitan Transportation Plan kickoff.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the BPAC. Dominic Loya for MPO staff. So we are back at that time of year again, as many of you have been here before. It is time to start the MTP again. The MTP is a 5-year plan, forecasting out 20 to 25 years. So this is the long-range vision for the MPO area. As you can see here, because we serve as a forum for regional transportation planning and decision-making in central Doña County, we also do maintain eligibility for central Doña County with federal funds, federal transportation funds. So those are pretty much the big main operating deals, and basically the MTP is a federally required document to maintain this eligibility. We want to, basically this will be establishing a long-range vision for the MPO area for project development and completion. So this is Mobility 2045. This was the last MTP. It was, and its core vision was serve all transportation users by planning, implementing, maintaining a transportation system that coordinates land use and transportation planning. So for this next one, we will have to come up with a core vision also. We will be doing public engagement. This will be the first part of the public engagement. So over the past few MTPs, for everybody that's been here before, it used to be a 2-year process. We've slimmed it down. We're going for 18 months. That was across the state. It was kind of felt that the first public engagement wasn't necessarily valid by the time we got to the end of the process. So we are doing it so that it is 18 months. There'll be 3 rounds of public engagement. The first will be March and April of this year. We'll have a second set September to November. And then as we bring the final document back from March to April of 2025, TAC will have a work session on April 4th. BPAC will have a work session on this on April 16th, the next BPAC meeting. So the preliminary public engagement so far as we have it scheduled, all MPO board and committee meetings are considered public meetings for this. We will be in Vado del Cerro on March 21st. We'll be at the Las Cruces Farmers Market on March 30th. And then in April, we will be at Radium Springs in the town of Mesilla. And as soon as I have those dates, we will post those dates on our website and we will send them out to the committees. So these were just the general goals for Mobility 2045. And as I said, they are general goals because of how far out this goes. Some of these will also be basically what are federally required as well within the MTP. In Mobility 2045, the ultimate goal is to develop an integrated, well-functioning transportation network that effectively serves the needs of the residents of the Mesilla Valley MPO area. So this is basically everything from transit, pedestrians, bicyclists, everything needs to be included in this. As we move forward for the next MTP, this will be part of it. As I said before, staff reached a decision to shorten the entire process from beginning to end to keep public comment for the entire process relevant. And the MTP must be adopted before June 30th of 2025. As the last MTP was adopted July of 2020, and that was 1 month later than we had to ask for an extension on that, and that was due to the pandemic. So this one does have to be June 30th of 2025. And with that, I will stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you. So the current plan is Mobility 2045, and the new plan, it'll be, you have it labeled as MTP 2050. Is that?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. So the naming process will be basically after the first round of public engagement for the new plan.
Yeah, because having watched other public meetings, county or the city, they'll reference the MPO plan, but it's just called Mobility 2045, and unless you know that that's the MTP, and I don't have the answer as to what it could be named instead, but maybe something more descriptive, something that indicates that it's an MPO plan rather than a county plan.
We'll take that under advisement, Mr. Chair. Maybe we'll just call it MTP 2050.
MV, Mesilla Valley MTP. or
Yes,
something.
yes, MV MTP. MV, MPO, MTP. Let's see if we can just get all the alphabet soup.
We're big on acronyms, so that maybe that's the good solution,
Maybe.
or not. Any other committee members? Seeing none, we'll move on to committee and staff comments. So City of Las Cruces is not present. And reading through the minutes, we had talked about finding out about Melendra's traffic calming process, so maybe the city can remind us about that when they come back. And also, the city is planning a public meeting on this Thursday, February 22nd at 6 p.m. at the second floor conference room, which is a speed management on collectors and arterials. So that'll be an interesting thing to see from the city. Doña County, do you have anything for us?
Chair, no, just a comment on our last meeting, I think it was Mr. Bencomo who had a question about the Shalem Colony Park. So I emailed the staff, this was back on January 18th, just an update on that so they could distribute that. If not, I can just resend the email and then that way it gets distributed amongst the BPAC members, so.
Okay, and there's the Elks Trail project, that's a Doña project, that's a county project, right?
That is correct. I don't really have any update on that one.
I think it's substantially complete, but there might be the checklist
There might
items.
be other faces coming down the road. I don't know if Ashley has any input on that. I know she's been talking with Angela.
Yeah,
so.
I do have some updates on that. We're going to be meeting, the school district and the county will be meeting on Monday to talk about continuing the multi-use trail in front of Columbia Elementary, just so that it's continuous. And then the county's hoping to do the next stretch down from the border of Columbia Elementary to the city county border at that point, in hopes that then the city will take it on and complete it over the city stretch there. So, yeah, I think, but it's complete as far as I know.
So that's somewhat within the borders of the I-25 corridor study. Is that being considered there? Do you have any information on that? Looking at MDOT?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, yeah, I was going to touch on that. As a matter of fact, next week, and again, invite you all. Your input is welcome. We do have the I-25 safety corridor study next Thursday, Doña Elementary School at 6 o'clock. It's going to address capacity issues on the interstate and also address any issues on Thorpe Road, New Mexico 320. Multimodal connectivity, pedestrian access, and so forth. So that's included next week.
Okay. Town of Mesilla is not present. NMSU, do you have any updates for us?
Mr. Chair, Sue Lynn Acosta for the record. No, we do not.
Okay, thank you. And then we're on to NMDOT projects.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just add one more thing. We started construction on Motel Boulevard as of Monday. We'll be having closures for about 2.5, 3 weeks. They're going to be reconstructing the off-ramp eastbound on the eastbound interstate off-ramp, and then also Motel Boulevard, both northbound and southbound lanes. So we'll be expecting closures for the next 2.5, 3 weeks.
You're talking about the ramps will be closed, the exit?
The
and
exit,
entrance?
yeah, only the exit, eastbound exit on the interstate. The westbound exit is also closed, but no construction on the ramp itself. That's just to facilitate the construction on Motel Boulevard itself.
So access on Motel Boulevard, there should be no problem.
Under Motel Boulevard will be limited. You can go northbound on Motel Boulevard, passing the interstate, but you won't be able to get through for a couple of weeks. You'll have to find alternate routes either through Avenida de Mesilla or taking the interchange up above and finding an alternate route.
Okay, so that's kind of significant if you're on a bicycle.
Yes, no. You're correct, sir.
Okay, staff updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Andrew Ray for the record. I have two things that I wish to discuss with the committee tonight. First one is the MPO transition. I'm pleased to report that we are now making sustained progress on getting that moved forward. We have a fiscal agent fee offer from the city of Las Cruces. They were actively considering. We actually have an executive committee of the MPO board meeting tomorrow afternoon to discuss the offer from the city of Las Cruces. So I anticipate that things are going to continue to move along smoothly with regard to that. More updates to come. Second thing I want to inform the committee is we do have an ongoing State of New Mexico Transportation Project Fund call for projects that wraps up on April the 5th. This is unfortunately, again, a very short time frame, but unfortunately, the way the calendar fell out this year, all of the relevant committee meetings that we have to do as far as following our internal process, they're as early as they possibly can be in the month, which it shaves as much as a week off of the time that our member jurisdictions have to consider projects. Unfortunately, we just have no choice in the matter. It is what it is. So we do encourage our member jurisdictions to put in applications for the TPF. We have already heard from some member jurisdictions that they do intend to apply. So unlike the RTP, where we did not have any applications this year, we do anticipate having TPF projects to consider at the April BPAC meeting. So that concludes the staff updates, and I will stand for any questions.
Okay, seeing none, we'll go on to committee comments. I guess one thing I noticed that we might need to be looking at attendance issues again.
It's early in the year, Mr. Chair, so no one's in attendance trouble yet, but yes, please everyone be here. Please everyone be here.
And I think that's all I probably have. Committee members? Ashley, you want to tell us about the bike classes that are coming up?
Oh, sure. I have three things in that case. This Saturday, we have a Back on the Bike class. These are safety classes for adults. So if anybody hasn't ridden the bike since you were a kid and you were like, well, I'd want to go, but everybody knows how to ride a bike except me, you do need to know how to ride a bike, but this is just really a beginner's class for traffic safety. It's through the League of American Bicyclists. It's free. You do need to register, so if that's something you're interested in, please talk to me. And then there's another class on Sunday that's the advanced class. It's for, it's the smart cycling class, and it's also the prerequisite to become a league cycling instructor, if that's of interest. There's an article that came out in USA Today about New Mexico and the pedestrian fatalities and the state of affairs that would be maybe interesting for this committee. So if you want to just search that up or ask us, we can send you a link to it. The Vulnerable Road Users New Mexico group that Barbara Toth runs, she's listed in there and also quoted in that one for Safe Routes to School. And then very excitingly, this is like one of those things, we all know how slowly things move in bureaucracy. As of yesterday, I have a job posting for a full-time Safe Routes to School champion. So if anybody is ready to jump ship and come work with Safe Routes to School, that posting is live and available. If you know seriously, if you know somebody who might be interested in that, please talk to me. Be happy to share it out. Thank you.
Okay, Andrew?
Mr. Chair, Andrew Bencomo for the record. I wanted to ask City of Las Cruces, but they're not here, so hopefully we'll get to next time. But NMSU, a while back I had seen it was a proposal for a multi-use trail connector from Ciceboro Park down Arrowhead Drive to, from Wells down to Sam Steele. Do you know what the status of that is?
Sulina Costa for the record. No, I do not know. I have not had much interaction with the committee or the people who are doing that. So I can find out, I can research that and hopefully have some information for you. And I can send that out to the committee
Okay, thank you,
once I
that'd be
find
great.
out.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Since I'm new, I kind of wanted to introduce myself, Longino Bustillos here in Doña. And just, first of all, I want to thank the committee because I know you put a lot of time and effort in making our community safe and making it a community that you want to live in. I just kind of wanted to say a couple of things about myself, just so you know a little bit about me. But first of all, you heard my analysis. I have 33 years of federal statistical analysis experience behind me, so data is my thing. I do have the major event. I have 3 friends that were personally went through experience with 1 fatality and 2 bicyclists that were injured. So I have a personal interest on. I know I've done a lot of data analysis. I count 1,400 injuries in the last 10 years here, but my objective is really to get down to 0 as soon as possible because I've seen the impact. You think, well, it's just fatalities, but the injuries, it's a game changer, and I have firsthand experience with that. I also have lived in other communities that are very pro VRU, vulnerable road users, Sacramento and Austin, and I have a lot of ideas. I heard a lady speak about a priority matrix, about finding what's the source of the issues that we need to address, and then what's the highest priority and working on that way. So I have lots of ideas. So again, I ask the committee for any guidance you can give me because I need a lot of guidance. So, but glad to be here with you.
Okay, thank you.
We're glad you're here too. Thank you.
I think your experience could be helpful as we go through the MTP process. Any other committee members? Seeing none, we'll go on.
Mr. Chair, actually, may I ask one more question of the county, and the city's not here either, but the Safe Streets for All Fund, have you heard any updates on that one, or do we know anything about the Safe Streets for All? I know that we're going to be pulling together the stakeholders group, but that's been a few months and I haven't heard anything, any updates that anybody knows of.
So this past, do you want to answer that, or?
Just say, no, I haven't heard anything, but I can get back to you on that.
Okay, at the last Board of Commissions meeting, they approved the contract, or approved going into a contract with Tool Design up to $500,000. So they must have $100,000 from someplace else, and that's to do a safety assessment for the entire county. And the city also has a $400,000 grant, and they were talking about, seems like at the budget session, they were also going to spend up to $500,000 to do the safe routes, essentially an update to the active transportation plan, and also 4 pilot projects that I don't have any details on. But that's still, that money hasn't arrived here yet, so that process is still underway.
Thank you.
Okay. Public comment? Seeing none, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Ashley Curry, so moved.
Just Waller, second.
Without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you.